My name is Camelia. I'm 30 years old and I live in Portland, Oregon. If there's one thing I've always known, it's that I was the backup plan in my own family. The afterthought. The one they forgot to clap for. I wasn't always bitter, just observant. It started small. A skipped birthday, a forgotten award, and then it just snowballed. Savannah, my little sister, was born 3 years after me, and from the moment she learned to say please, the entire world bent to her, especially our parents. I remember my 7th birthday like it happened yesterday. Mom brought home a tiny cake with drooping frosting, lit 7 uneven candles, and mumbled something about making a wish. No balloons, no music, just me, that lopsided cake, and a disposable camera flash that never got developed. But when Savannah turned 4, they turned our backyard into Disneyland. There was a woman in a glittering Elsa costume singing Disney tunes, a cotton candy machine whirling in the corner, and over 20 screaming kids tearing through a bounce house like it was the Olympics. I asked why I didn't get that when I was 4. Mom just laughed and said, "You're older now. You don't need all that stuff." I didn't say it out loud, but I remember thinking, but I'm still a kid too. A kid who just wanted to feel like she mattered. By the time I hit middle school, the imbalance was hard to ignore. I saved nearly a year's worth of allowance to buy a pair of teal rollerblades I'd been dreaming about. Savannah? She cried for 5 minutes, and the next day Mom showed up with a brand new, top-of-the-line pair. When I said it wasn't fair, she tilted her head and replied, "You're the older sister. You should be more understanding." Understanding. That word haunted me for years. I joined the volleyball team in 8th grade, trained until my legs gave out. Our team made the regional finals. I was captain. I looked up at the stands, hoping to see someone from home. Just one face. Nobody came. That night, Mom texted, "Sorry, sweetie. Savannah had a stomachache. Maybe next time?" I stopped asking them to come after that. Everything Savannah did was framed. Literally. Her preschool finger paintings, center stage in our living room, me. I won 2nd place in a statewide writing contest in 10th grade and got a polite nod and a "don't let it go to your head." I worked my ass off in high school, debate club, science team, internships, college prep courses. While my friends were posting dance challenges on TikTok, I was mapping out 5-year goals in a bullet journal. My dream was simple: be good enough that they couldn't ignore me. Spoiler alert, they still did. The summer before senior year, I got into a competitive research program, only 10 spots for the entire state. I brought the acceptance letter home, beaming. Dad barely glanced at it. "Just don't forget to vacuum before you go," he said. Savannah once said she wanted to learn to drive. The next day, she had a used Subaru in the driveway and a private driving coach. Me? I practiced in Aunt Lydia's old Camry on Sunday mornings, while Dad sipped coffee inside. But I wasn't jealous of the car. I was jealous of being believed in, of being someone's pride, a feeling I only ever read about in novels. I got a full ride to Northcliffe University, a miracle school, with an acceptance rate lower than most Ivy Leagues. I came home with my letter, trembling. My hands were sweating. Mom said, "Northcliffe? That's far. Are you sure you're ready for that kind of pressure?" Then she got up and walked into Savannah's room. Didn't even ask me what I wanted. That night, I booked my own bus ticket to move into the dorms. I carried my suitcases alone. No farewell hugs, no send-off dinner, not even a text that said good luck. It was the moment I realized they didn't just forget me, they never saw me to begin with. College was hard. Not the classes, I was used to the grind, but the silence, the emptiness, the realization that if I fell apart, no one would notice. I got insomnia, ate alone most nights, had panic attacks that I called bad sleep cycles so I wouldn't scare my roommate. Everything crashed sophomore year when I fainted during a presentation and ended up in the ER diagnosis, chronic stress. The counselor I was forced to see asked me a question that stuck in my ribs like a splinter. "Camelia, do you feel like you're constantly trying to earn something that was never yours to begin with?" I cried. Right there on that sterile couch under flickering lights. It was the first time I admitted it out loud. I just wanted to be seen. Therapy changed me, slowly, like melting ice. I majored in finance because I wanted to understand control, the kind of control my parents always wielded over me without realizing. I got a paid internship, then a part-time job. graduated with honors, moved to Seattle, built a life I could actually call mine. I stopped trying to prove anything to my parents. At least, I thought I did. Until the day the phone rang and Aunt Nadine whispered, "Your grandfather passed last night," in his sleep. I sat down on my living room floor, knees pulled tight. He was the only one who ever looked at me like I mattered. The funeral was quiet, no drama, no speeches, just the soft hum of organ music and the smell of old lilies. I arrived early and sat in the back. I wasn't there to be seen. I was there because Grandpa deserved that much. The only man in my life who ever treated me like I wasn't invisible. Savannah showed up wearing a sleek black dress and flawless makeup. She sat beside Mom and Dad like a porcelain doll in a museum, delicate, admired, untouched. I didn't approach. I couldn't. I left before they noticed me. 1 week later, a letter arrived, cream envelope, blue stamp. My name handwritten on the front in a way that looked almost reverent. It was from James Calloway, Grandpa's longtime attorney. Inside was an invitation to the reading of his will. The lawyer's office was one of those old downtown buildings with exposed brick and a grandfather clock in the corner that ticked louder than the conversation. The whole family was there. Mom, Dad, Savannah, Uncle Louis, Aunt Nia, even my cousin Levi, who barely shows up for Thanksgiving. I sat near the window. James, an older man with kind eyes and fingers that shook slightly when he adjusted his glasses, began reading. He moved through the formalities until he reached the line that silenced the room. All of my personal assets, including properties, investment accounts, and cash savings, shall be equally divided among my 3 grandchildren, Camelia Brooke, Savannah Brooke, and Levi Anderson. I didn't react, but inside, something cracked open. $500,000 each. Not because I asked, not because I begged, but because Grandpa quiet, steady Grandpa saw us as equals. For the first time in my life, I was included in something without having to fight for it. But I knew immediately so did my parents, and they didn't like it one bit. That night, I was folding laundry and watching the rain roll down my kitchen window when my phone buzzed. A text from Mom. "Are you home? Dad and I would like to stop by." I already knew what it was about. 15 minutes later, they were in my living room. Mom sat on the edge of the sofa like she didn't want to touch it. Dad stayed standing, arms crossed, expression tight. He got to the point. "Your mom and I think it would be more fair if Savannah got your share." I blinked. "Excuse me?" "She's going through a lot right now," Mom added quickly. "Part-time job, breakup. She's fragile." I looked between them, stunned. "You want me to give up what Grandpa left me? Just like that?" Dad sighed like I was being difficult on purpose. "You're doing well, Camelia. You've got a job, a place. Savannah doesn't have that security. So you think I owe her my future because I worked for it?" "Don't be dramatic," Mom snapped. "We're just asking you to do the right thing." "No," I said, voice low but steady. "You're asking me to disappear again, just like always." They didn't like that. Dad's tone turned cold. "You keep that money, don't expect to be welcome in our home." I stood, quietly. "Then maybe it's time I stopped trying to be welcome there." They left without another word. The door shut behind them with the softest click, but it felt like a slammed gate. 3 days later, I got an email that chilled me to the bone. Subject line, "Temporary change in will executor notification attached." A scanned court filing. My father, Daniel Brooke, had been appointed as the temporary executor of my grandfather's estate and had already filed a petition claiming Grandpa was not of sound mind when he wrote the will. They were trying to erase me. Legally. Posthumously. I forwarded the email to the one person I knew would understand. Grandma Eleanor. She lived alone in the red brick house in Spokane, where Grandpa had built their life together. I hadn't visited in over a year, but when she answered the door, she pulled me in with a hug that lasted longer than any goodbye I ever got from my own parents. At her kitchen table, she placed a thick folder in front of me. Her hands were steady. "Your grandfather saw this coming." She slid the papers over. "A few years ago, your father tried to convince him to write you out. Said you didn't need help. That Savannah was the one who deserved everything." My stomach clenched. "But he didn't listen," she continued. "He said, 'I have 3 grandchildren. They all matter. That's final.'" She handed me a USB. That has the audio recording from the day he updated the will. Notes. Witness statements. Everything. If this goes to court, you'll need it. I didn't cry. I just nodded. And for the first time, I felt like someone had handed me armor instead of asking me to stand there unguarded. The next week was war. Dad emailed relatives saying Grandpa was confused, manipulated. Mom hinted on Facebook that I was clinging to cash and tearing the family apart. I didn't respond. Instead, I sent everything to James Calloway. Every receipt, every timestamp, every file Grandma gave me. His reply came fast. We're calling an emergency hearing. Please prepare to attend. The hearing was held in a sterile conference room, bright lights, cold chairs. All of us seated around a polished oak table like strangers pretending to be family. James stood at the head, cleared his throat. After reviewing all evidence, documents, audio, and signed statements, we find no indication of diminished mental capacity. Furthermore, per Clause 14 of the will, any party attempting to dispute the distribution forfeits their share. Dad's face turned gray. James turned to him. Daniel Brooke, you are hereby removed as executor. The estate will now be handled by a neutral third party, my mother gasped. I said nothing. Then I looked toward Grandma. She nodded just once. And that was enough. That evening, I got a confirmation email from the bank, $500,000. Transferred. I stared at the screen, my throat tight. This wasn't about the money. It never was. It was about finally keeping something without being told I didn't deserve it. It was about finally being allowed to exist. I thought it was over. The courtroom had spoken. The money was mine. The lies had fallen apart. I could finally breathe. But healing doesn't come in a bank transfer, and peace doesn't arrive just because a battle ends. Sometimes, it arrives as a late-night phone call. It was just past 10 p.m., the air was cool, and the scent of lavender drifted through my apartment from the little plant I kept near the window. I was curled up on the couch, a cup of peppermint tea going cold on the table. Then my phone buzzed. Savannah. I stared at the screen, thumb hovering, heart thudding. It had been weeks since we last spoke. Weeks since I'd refused to give her my inheritance. Weeks since she stood silently behind Mom and Dad, arms crossed, lips tight. I picked up. Her voice was small, like it had been dragged through a rough place. Cam. I don't know who to trust anymore. Just like that. No preamble, no defensiveness. Just raw confusion. I leaned back, unsure whether to speak or stay quiet. But silence felt like a cruelty she already knew too well. I'm listening, I said softly. What followed was something I never expected. She told me Mom had been pressuring her again, that she'd been asked to sign over her portion of the inheritance temporarily for tax reasons. That Dad had implied she was the only one smart enough to protect the family. She didn't say it outright, but I could hear the panic in her breath. Like she was beginning to see the strings tied to her wrists. Like she'd spent years dancing without realizing someone else was pulling every move. They said you turned your back on us, she whispered. That you manipulated Grandpa, that you threatened to walk away if he didn't give you more. I closed my eyes. So that was the story now. Do you believe that? I asked. A pause. No. I don't know why I didn't speak up sooner, I think. I was scared of losing their approval. That part hit harder than I wanted to admit. It's easy to hate someone who's favored. Harder to realize they're trapped, too. Savannah had always lived under the weight of being precious. That sounds like a gift until you realize being precious means you're not allowed to fail. Or think for yourself. Or ask questions. It's a leash made of lace, and now hers was fraying. A few days passed. We didn't speak. Then, on a quiet Saturday afternoon, as sunlight spilled across the hardwood floor and soft jazz played in the background, my doorbell rang. It was her. No makeup, no styled hair. Just Savannah, standing there in jeans and an oversized hoodie, like someone who had just walked out of a storm and wasn't sure what to do with the sun. I opened the door and stepped aside. No questions, no performance. She sat on the couch. We didn't say anything for a minute. The silence didn't feel hostile, just heavy. Then she broke it. I'm sorry. She looked straight ahead, fingers knotting the edge of her sleeve. Not just for what Mom and Dad are doing, but for not saying anything when they did it to you. For knowing and still pretending not to see. I didn't respond right away. I didn't need to, because what she said next made something in me shift. I always thought you were cold, but now I realize you were just tired of being invisible. That was the first time she'd ever said anything like that. We talked for hours about Grandpa, about childhood, about how I stopped asking to be chosen, about how she never knew how to be anything but the chosen one. She admitted she'd started seeing a counselor at her community college, that she was majoring in social work because she wanted to help people who'd been hurt by the ones who were supposed to protect them. People like you, she said quietly. And honestly, people like me too. She told me Mom had threatened to cut her off. Dad hadn't spoken to her in days. The family group chat? Silence. But you know what? She added. I don't think I want to go back to who I was before. I was a mirror. I reflected whatever they wanted, and I realized this wasn't just an apology. It was her first step into the light. In the weeks that followed, we built something new. Every Wednesday night, Savannah called me after her classes, sometimes just to vent, sometimes to ask what the hell emotional labor really meant, other times to tell me about something she read that reminded her of me. She asked for books. I sent her PDFs on boundaries, trauma recovery, and how to survive a family that claims to love you while feeding on your silence. We weren't sisters playing catch-up. We were survivors learning how to trust one another in a world that never taught us how. Then something else shifted. One morning, Savannah called. Her voice was tight. Cam, I got a letter from the IRS. Apparently, a suspicious transaction had triggered a red flag. A large sum of money traced to an old account under Dad's name had been funneled into Savannah's in the week following Grandpa's death. I didn't know anything about it, she said. I swear, I never signed off on that. My gut twisted. It was one thing for them to manipulate, another for them to cross a line into fraud. We didn't say the word out loud, but we both knew what this could become. I told her to send me a copy of the letter. Then I reached out to Mr. Calloway. He confirmed what we feared. If this is accurate, it's not just a family dispute anymore. It's a criminal investigation. He asked for permission to loop in a financial auditor. I said yes, not because I wanted revenge, but because I was tired of truth living in the shadows. A week later, Savannah came over again. We walked around Green Lake at dusk, the sky painted with streaks of violet and gold. She stopped near a bench and looked out over the water. You know, she said, I used to think you were lucky for being so independent. I envied that, but now I see how much it cost you. I glanced at her. And now you? I'm learning to pay my own price. That was the moment I knew she was trying. Really trying. Not to undo the past, but to grow beyond it. And I was willing to meet her there. Some betrayals are loud. Shouting, slamming doors, rage spilled across the floor. Others? They move like smoke. Quiet, slow, creeping into places you thought were safe. This was the second kind. The letter from the IRS turned out to be just the start. Within days, a financial auditor hired by Mr. Calloway confirmed that a trust transfer was registered under Savannah's name. The issue wasn't the amount, it was the source. The funds had been siphoned from one of Grandpa's older retirement accounts, days after his death, by someone using Dad's login credentials. Savannah hadn't signed anything. She hadn't even known the account existed. But her name was on the record, which meant, in the eyes of the law, she was part of it until proven otherwise. I met with Calloway the next morning. His office was quieter than usual, like even the walls understood the gravity. If your sister cooperates, he said, we can push for immunity. But your father, he didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. Dad was crossing into dangerous territory, reaching past manipulation into something with real legal weight. And suddenly, this wasn't just my story anymore. It was Savannah's too. I drove straight to her apartment that afternoon. She opened the door with red-rimmed eyes and her hair pulled into a messy bun. I didn't know Cam, she said before I could say anything. I swear. I believe you. Because this time I did. We spent the next hour going over everything. Emails, paperwork, transactions she didn't remember authorizing. The same parents who once handed her gifts and praise were now using her as a shield. That's the thing about golden children once the shine wears off. The pedestal becomes a cage. They told me not to worry about the paperwork, she said, voice shaking. They said it was family stuff, that I didn't need to understand it. I stared at her. That's not love. That's control dressed up like protection. She covered her face with her hands. What do I do? I reached into my bag and handed her the contact card for Calloway's office. You? Tell the truth. All of it. That weekend, Savannah submitted a full statement through Callaway. It detailed her lack of involvement, the pressure from our parents, and everything she remembered about the inheritance process. It was raw, messy, brave. She chose truth over allegiance. And from that moment, everything exploded. The fallout started like a whisper. Mom posted a cryptic Bible verse on Facebook about betrayal. Dad sent a group email to extended family, painting me as a bitter daughter trying to divide and conquer. Cousin Michaela reached out to ask if I really filed fraud charges against my own parents. I didn't reply, because none of them were asking to understand. They were asking to confirm their version of me. Then came the worst part, the house. Not the one I lived in, the old house, Grandpa's house, the red brick place in Spokane where I learned to ride a bike, where Grandma made pumpkin bread every October, and where Grandpa used to hum old jazz tunes while fixing broken radios. Dad had started paperwork to sell it, without telling Grandma. She called me late one evening. Her voice didn't shake, but I could hear the hurt in every syllable. He said the house is too much for me now, that I should move in with your aunt and let the estate cover the costs. But it's your home, I said. That's what I told him. But he said it belongs to the family now, and I'm just part of the past. I gripped the phone until my knuckles hurt. He's wrong, I know, sweetheart. But this time, I'm not stepping aside. That was the moment I realized this wasn't just about money or status anymore. This was about power, ownership, legacy. And Dad wasn't just trying to erase me. He was rewriting the whole story from the ground up. I drove to Spokane the next day. Grandma met me at the door with a folder in her hand and something sharper in her eyes than I'd ever seen before. If they want to fight for control, let them fight the truth. Inside the folder were decades of documents, deeds, letters, medical records, even Grandpa's old journals detailing every meeting he'd had with Callaway and why he'd made the decisions he did. He knew they'd try to twist this. I read every page. One entry stopped me cold. If you're reading this, Camellia, it means they tried to erase what I chose. Don't let them. The house is not just wood and brick. It's memory. It's where truth still lives. That's when I stopped seeing this as defense. It was time to play offense. I contacted Callaway. He agreed to file a motion to freeze any attempt to liquidate estate properties without full consent of all beneficiaries, including Grandma. At the same time, Savannah requested a temporary restraining order on financial activity linked to her name. It wasn't easy. She cried the night before filing. I never thought I'd have to protect myself from them, but she did it anyway. That's how I knew she'd changed. And then, just when I thought nothing else could surprise me, a letter arrived at my apartment, handwritten, no return address. Inside, a single sheet of paper, no greeting, no signature. Family is forever, but your pride will leave you alone. I didn't flinch. I didn't get angry. I just folded it neatly and slid it into a drawer, because pride didn't leave me alone. Pride helped me survive a childhood where I was never clapped for. Pride got me through sleepless nights and courtroom fights. Pride helped me rebuild from silence. And I wasn't alone anymore. Not with Grandma. Not with Savannah. Not with the version of myself I'd fought to find. You always think the big moment will come with shouting, with chairs pushed back and someone storming out. But the most dangerous shifts in a family don't come like thunder. They come like splinters. Small, sharp, silent. And then suddenly, the whole house is full of cracks. It started with the family reunion, the one I wasn't invited to. It was held at Aunt Claudia's lake house, our parents' favorite showpiece, a perfect backdrop for curated smiles and staged forgiveness. Savannah went, not because she wanted to, but because she needed to know what they'd say when they thought I wasn't listening. She called me the next morning, still sitting in her car, engine off, her voice tight from holding too much in. Cam, they passed around a new legacy plan Dad wrote up. He says the house in Spokane should be turned into a family trust. He's trying to erase Grandma's rights, said she's too old to manage property. My stomach turned. Did anyone object? Aunt Nia tried. But he said it was for the good of the family. Then he brought up how you ejacked the inheritance and dragged Savannah into legal nonsense. She paused. And Mom? She just nodded. Said she didn't raise a daughter who'd sue her own blood. There it was again, that word they loved, blood. As if it was a leash. as if sharing a surname meant sharing shame. I didn't respond with anger. I'd done that before. I knew where it led nowhere. Instead, I called Grandma. We made a decision. She would attend the next meeting herself. 2 weeks later, in the middle of August heat, we walked together into the same lake house I had avoided for years. Everything smelled like cedarwood and fake politeness. They were surprised to see me. Even more surprised to see Grandma in slacks and lipstick, holding a folder like it was a sword. "Before we start," she said, voice firm, "I'd like to clarify a few things about the house you're trying to claim." She laid the folder on the table. "This includes Grandpa's notarized declaration, property deeds, and a formal amendment to the estate plan stating the home remains under my full authority until death or written transfer." Dad blinked. "That wasn't shared in the documents we reviewed. Because you weren't meant to manage it, he removed you after the first attempt to override the will." Silence. Mom stood, trying to smooth it over. "Let's not turn this into a courtroom. This is family." Grandma turned to her. "Then start acting like it." I didn't say much. I didn't have to. The truth, when it stands on its own legs, doesn't need a bodyguard. Still, before we left, I looked directly at my parents and said, "You may have built your world on the idea that I'd stay silent, but I stopped living in that version of myself a long time ago." They didn't answer. Maybe because they didn't recognize the woman standing in front of them. After that, things moved fast. Calloway filed a restraining order to freeze all estate manipulation attempts without unanimous consent. Grandma updated her legal documents, naming Savannah and me as her only authorized decision-makers. That shattered whatever illusion of control my parents had left. And so they turned to what they knew best: whispers. Rumors started circulating through our extended relatives that I'd forged Grandpa's signature, that Savannah had been blackmailed into siding with me, that Grandma was being influenced in her old age. A family friend even messaged me directly, "Are you really dragging your parents through court just for money?" I didn't reply, because they always frame it like that, as if what we're fighting for is cash, not dignity, not truth, not the right to stand tall in the house you were told you'd never belong in. But the cracks didn't stop at our feet. They kept spreading. Savannah received a letter from the family accountant, a suggestion to reassign her funds into a shared family portfolio for safety. No signature, just pressure masked as guidance. She laughed. Not loudly, but with disbelief. They really think I'm still that girl who just signs whatever they slide across the table. And that's when I realized she was past the point of return. We both were. That weekend, Savannah and I sat on my apartment balcony, eating takeout straight from the containers. She scrolled through her phone, then looked up. "Do you remember my 12th birthday?" I nodded. "The party with the unicorn cake and that clown who scared everyone?" "Yeah, that one. You left halfway through. You said you were going to the library." "I did." She looked at me, eyes soft. "Back then, I thought you were just being dramatic, like you hated me for getting everything." I didn't say anything, but now I realize, maybe you just didn't want to watch another celebration you were never a part of. That hit harder than I expected. "I think I'm just starting to understand what it means to lose something you never had," she said. "Like a version of mom and dad that existed only in stories, not reality." And there it was. The clean cut. The realization that you can grieve people who are still alive, because what you're really mourning is the role they were supposed to play, and never did. The next morning, Savannah called me from her school parking lot. She was crying, but not because she was afraid. "I'm switching my major, from general psych to trauma therapy." "Why?" "Because I want to help people who feel invisible. I've been both, the one who got too much and the one who didn't know how to apologize for it." That's when I knew this wasn't just my story anymore. It was hers too. But it wasn't over, because just 2 days later, Grandma called me with a voice like thunder behind a closed door. "They sent a legal letter to my lawyer." "What kind of letter?" "They're demanding a full reassessment of the will, claiming you coerced me into changing my beneficiaries." My throat went dry. "What did the lawyer say?" He laughed. She paused, then continued. "But I'm not. And I knew this was their final attempt, their last hand. They couldn't erase me, so now they'd try to unwrite everything again. But I was ready. This time, I wasn't fighting alone. The letter wasn't a surprise. After everything they'd tried first with guilt, then manipulation, then rumor legal retaliation was the last card on the table. They accused me of coercion, said I'd turned Grandma against them, said I'd manipulated Grandpa's will for personal gain. It was surreal, reading that letter, like seeing yourself drawn in chalk by someone who only knew you in shadow. But I didn't panic. Not this time. Because this time, I wasn't the girl they could twist into guilt. Calloway met with us 2 days later. Grandma, Savannah, and I sat in his office as he laid out the plan. Their claims won't hold. You've got dated statements, audio, notarized paperwork, and supporting witnesses. He paused, then looked at me directly. But we'll still have to face them. In court. One more time, I nodded. Let's finish this. The hearing was scheduled for the following month. It wasn't dramatic like TV courtrooms. Just a sterile room with high ceilings, stiff chairs, and a judge who looked like she'd rather be anywhere else. Mom and Dad sat across from us. They didn't look at me, not once. They came armed with a new attorney, one of those smooth talking types who tries to charm their way through holes in the truth. But the truth doesn't need charm, it needs clarity. And we had it. Calloway laid out every fact chronologically, cleanly, calmly. Grandpa's estate plan, his recorded statements, the conflict of interest when my father tried to act as executor while pushing for unilateral changes, the evidence of attempted financial reassignment, the letter they sent Grandma, which contradicted their entire claim of family unity. It was methodical, but you could feel the weight of it land, piece by piece. Then something I didn't expect happened. Savannah stood up. She wasn't asked to, no one planned it. But she rose from her seat, voice steady. I was the one who got everything growing up. Not because I earned it, but because they chose to see me, and only me. And I didn't know how much that hurt my sister until it almost hurt me too. She turned to the judge. I was named in fraudulent paperwork I didn't authorize. They used my name like a tool. And for the first time, I realized how powerless Cam must have felt all those years. She paused, then looked directly at our parents. I'm not against you. I just won't be used by you anymore. Silence followed. Not because she broke down, but because she didn't. And in that silence, something inside me shifted for good. The judge ruled the claims against us baseless, dismissed in full. Grandma's authority over the property reaffirmed, the inheritance untouched. But the ruling wasn't the real win was what came after. Weeks passed. There were no more emails, no more texts. My parents didn't call. I wasn't surprised. I'd learned by then that some people don't walk away from you. They just stop seeing you when they can't control you. And that's okay, because I don't need to be seen by people who only look through me. I focused on what mattered. I used part of the inheritance to finish paying off Grandma's house, even though she insisted she didn't need it. I know, I told her, but I want this place to be yours. Not just in memory, but in freedom. She cried that day, and so did I. I helped Savannah pay her tuition for the semester. She hesitated. I don't want you to feel obligated. I don't, I said. This isn't a family debt. This is a choice. And it felt good, giving from a place of strength, not sacrifice. I kept building quietly, finished a certification in trauma-informed care, started hosting weekend support groups out of a small community space in Beacon Hill. I called the project New Arms for the people still learning what it means to be held without harm. Every Saturday morning, the space filled with stories, some whispered, some wept, some finally spoken after years of silence. People like me, like Savannah, like the version of myself I used to be. I didn't try to fix anyone, I just listened, held space, passed the tea. And somehow, in doing that, I began to feel whole. Savannah came to one of the sessions once, not to speak, just to observe. Afterward, we sat outside watching the late spring sun dip behind the trees. She leaned her head on my shoulder. You know, for a long time I thought you were trying to take what was mine. But now I see. You were just trying to hold on to what was yours. And that's what healing is. Not erasing the past, but reclaiming your place in it. The last time I saw my parents was almost a year after the final hearing. I went to drop off some documents Grandma needed signed. Mom opened the door. She looked older, tired in a way that no makeup could hide. She didn't smile, didn't ask me in, just said, "You look settled." "I am," I replied. There was a long pause. Then, "You really don't want to come back, do you?" I looked at her. at the woman who gave me life but never gave me space to live it. I never left. I just stopped begging to be welcomed. She didn't say anything, and that silence, that was the last goodbye I needed. Now, I wake up every morning in a home I chose and a life I built, with peace that no longer asks for permission. There's a lavender plant on my windowsill, a couch that's finally soft enough to sink into, a shelf with Grandpa's old radio still working when I plug it in. Savannah's thriving at university. Grandma's hosting weekend book clubs. And me? I'm not the girl who got forgotten anymore. I'm the woman who remembered herself. And that's more than enough. Final thoughts, sometimes the family you're born into is the one that teaches you the hardest lessons. But it's the family you choose through boundaries, through truth, through healing that teaches you how to rise. What matters isn't who claps for you. It's who stands with you when the clapping stops. If you've ever felt like Camellia, unseen, unheard, unwanted, know this. You are not alone, and you are not broken. You are just beginning. And sometimes, that's the most powerful place to be. Story 2. My laptop was open but useless while I lay on the couch. I stared at the text that had just shown up on my phone. Dense. Just letting you know, you're not shocked then. The final guest list for the celebration this weekend has been announced. We had to reduce the number of attendees because of the limited area. I hope you get it. I, the person who donated hundreds of care packages, and my younger brother Noah, who had recently finished his 18-month military duty, delivered the message. He had been cut off from his welcome home party all the way to his base in Germany, who stayed up through time zone differences just to talk to him when he was feeling down. I kept my eyes on the screen, anticipating another text that said something like, "You're a VIP, just kidding." However, nothing. In actuality, it was a chilly exclusion. No guilt, no explanation. Something seemed to fall to the base of my chest. A gentle hit, not loud enough to scream, but weighty enough to make my chest feel like it was burdened down with stone. I had been there for him through all those months, when our parents were too busy or too stupid to know how to talk to a son stationed in a distant nation packed with restless nights and tough drills. I assisted his fiancée, Mia, in organizing a surprise video chat for his second birthday while he was away from home. Mia wanted the digital invitation for their engagement celebration to seem professional, so I meticulously crafted it. I had now been marked off as an additional visitor, an outsider who can't bear the pain of exclusion. I gave Dad a call. For weeks, he had been talking about this gathering with excitement. The live music, the meal, and even the rental of a massive projector for a highlight reel. He didn't answer the phone until it rung twice. He spoke in a raspy voice. "Known? Hi, Vic. What's happening, my love?" I didn't mince any words. I just got an SMS from Noah. "The guest list does not include me. You knew about this, didn't you?" The other person paused and then sighed. The type one was all too familiar with. When he didn't want to deal with things, he used that sort. Vic. Avoid overreacting. It's simply a family get-together. There is hardly much room. You are aware of that. I bit my lip. My voice kept steady, but every syllable felt like it was slashing into me. Insufficient room. Noah shared a list of more than 80 names on Instagram, which I recently saw. Distant relatives, elementary school pals, coworkers. He has known me for a few months. His sister is me. That sounded weird as he cleared his throat. Those folks sent out early RSVPs. Now, it's difficult to remove anyone. Sweetheart, don't take anything personally. My knuckles were white as I held the phone. Don't be upset about it. When he was a nervous mess in his first outfit, I was there. I talked him through difficult training days all night long. You're warning me not to overreact now? One more sigh. As if I were the one creating the commotion. This shouldn't become a thing. It's only a party. One evening, I didn't answer. All I could hear was my heart thumping, as if to tell me that something was going to burst. With a shaking hand, I hung up. My gaze remained fixed on the phone screen, where Noah's message about not having enough space remained unblinking. Using the heart emojis when I ordered his favorite takeaway, I saw his thankful texts when I sent homemade cookies, and my fingers started scrolling through old pictures and messages that said, "Without you, I probably would have given up already." It seemed like a faraway dream now. I put down the phone and got up. My heart is pounding silently, I wasn't angry with Noah for crossing me off. He didn't care and didn't think there was anything wrong with it, which infuriated me. Above all, I was upset with myself for constantly being there. Two are prepared to trust, too fast to pardon. I peered out the window. Like my breast, the sky was a drab gray. However, I was certain of one thing. Waiting for approval to exist was no longer an option for me. With my hand wrapped around a chilly coffee cup, I sat still on the couch. Dad's words still lingered in my thoughts, like a trapped recording. It's only a get-together. Just a get-together. It sounded so light when he said it, as if I were exaggerating, as if my disappointment wasn't worthy of recognition. But when my own family so readily decided that I wasn't worthy of being there, how could I not feel hurt? I rose and entered my little home office, where the desk was still covered in piles of design sketches. I took out a little USB stick from the drawer. It contained the Welcome Home Noah poster design file, which I had made without being asked since I believed it was what families did. I recalled being up until almost 2 in the morning. Need to locate the precise typeface that Mia like. Something having smooth curves that is lovely and delicate. I forwarded the final manuscript to her, and she replied with a heart emoji. Noah never said thank you, but I didn't mind then. I reasoned that if everything went well and he was delighted, it was plenty. He texted me around 2:00 p.m., and I recalled. While I was on a training break because my car fell, I'm at a loss for what to do. I made no inquiries. I just sent a note and transferred $500. Repair your vehicle. Don't worry. He departed for basic training for the first time. When it came to packing his suitcases, Mom was clueless. Dad was also confined to the repair shop. I got up at 4 a.m. and went across town to get the appropriate military-grade backpack written as part of the packing checklist to transport him more than an hour away to the military base. Furthermore, I was not even invited to the day of his return. After turning on my computer, I navigated to the Noah's Journey picture folder. Everything from his awkward first uniform photo to screenshots of our video calls. Even in a temporary space in Europe, his eyes were bright. My phone buzzed after a while. Mia sent a message. I am aware that Noah texted you, Vic. To be honest, I was shocked that you weren't invited, but please don't take it personally. Noah simply did not want too many people at the party. As my heart grew colder by the moment, I read what she had to say. Because of the way they spoke about me, not because of what she said, as though I were a burden to the atmosphere. I didn't reply. I didn't have to. I shut my laptop and walked to the window. It was now completely dark. I observed silhouettes moving along the silent West Portland street as the streetlights glowed. My parents' house was more than 1,000 miles away from the neighborhood where I had lived for almost 6 years. But whenever they needed something, I was the one who returned. When Dad had to replace the entire plumbing system, I paid the bill. When Mom needed someone to take her to her medical appointments, I booked the flights, rented the car, and arranged the schedule. I was always willing. But now I started asking myself, how many times have I given without ever receiving? How many times have I sacrificed just because I thought I was supposed to? Because I was the good older sister. I didn't know how long I stood by the window before the phone buzzed again. This time it was a message from Dad Thick. Please don't overthink this. It's not worth getting upset about. Please understand. Noah, he just wants a peaceful evening. No tension. I let out a laugh the first of the day, but it had no joy in it. No tension. So I'm the tension. I'm the one who ruins my own brother's peace. Just by being there. I walked over to the closet and pulled out my suitcase. The old pair of snow boots I bought last year but never got to use. Sat quietly in the corner. I opened my laptop and typed into the search bar. Solo ski trip Colorado images of cozy cabins tucked into pine forests. Snow-covered landscapes and crackling fireplaces filled the screen. In that moment, I knew I wasn't going to wait for anyone to invite me. I would create my own plans if they believed I wasn't significant enough to be at that party. Then I didn't need to sit here and endure being treated like an afterthought. I was no longer the elder sister, constantly behind the scenes, sacrificing in quiet. Not this time. Not ever again. The next morning, I left my flat earlier than normal. The pain of being left out still lingered, but instead of lingering at home, stewing in anger, I took my bag and walked out, dropping by the corner cafe I always attended on weekends. Hazel's Brew. The morning air in Portland still had the crisp chill of early spring. The cafe was warm, filled with the fragrance of cinnamon waffles and beautiful jazz music that helped soothe my heart a little. I got my usual and unsweetened almond milk latte and an apple dessert, then found a position near the window where the sunshine landed just exactly on the shiny oak table. I was ready to check the news on my phone when the voices of two persons behind me rose louder than normal. I wasn't attempting to eavesdrop. Really, I wasn't. But as I heard my name, my heart froze. What's her last name again? Victoria. Her name was missing from Noah's welcome back party attendee list. The voice was Lila's. In order to get attention, my cousin constantly spoke in a way that seemed half intentional and half unintentional. Perhaps she irritated Noah in some way. Who, after all, gets to check off their own sister from a guest list? I had heard that she was quite domineering in the past. I didn't breathe. Another cousin, Jenna, who once messaged me to create a birthday invitation for her baby, was the second voice, then neglected to express gratitude. Perhaps she ceased lending a hand financially. She used to send him money when he needed it, I heard, but now there's radio silence. Yes, Noah isn't actually to blame. Who would want someone to ruin a party? It felt like someone had hit me across the face. My throat constricted, and my ears burnt. I bit my lip tightly and stared at my coffee, forcing me not to look back. Everything they spoke cut through my remaining faith in my family. I don't know how long they kept chatting. All I know is that I felt very empty even though my coffee was still full when I got up. Like a ghost, I left. My hand was holding onto my bag strap so firmly that it ached. They weren't only gossiping. To them, it was confirmation. The extra was me. I had no idea where I was heading and strolled aimlessly till I came to a stop in front of the little bookshop at the end of the street. When Noah was still that shy little brother who clung to me in crowds, I used to go see him the summer before his senior year. I recalled how he stared at me with glistening eyes and selected a book about military history that afternoon. Would you be in favor of me if I ever joined the army? I'll always be behind you, I said him as I gave him a hug. And I fulfilled that commitment throughout the ensuing years. I didn't anticipate that by the time Noah returned, our own relatives' suspicious glances and careless whispers had taken my place. I took out my phone and reviewed the texts that Dad, Mia, and Noah had sent me again. All read? None of them responded, and I discovered that none of them believed it was improper to exclude me from the guest list. They just believed that I was being overly sensitive, fussing, being challenging. I didn't require an explanation. It was obvious that they had never really given me the respect I required. I came home with a solid and unambiguous choice. I would never again allow myself to be known as the challenging one. I didn't need to be the one resolving issues that I was no longer involved in if they felt I wasn't worthy of joining in their celebration. I went back to the travel booking page I had looked at the previous evening after opening my laptop. My cursor passed over places like Aspen and Jackson Hole before coming to a stop in a location I never would have imagined visiting, Wyoming's White Pine Lodge. Beside a frozen lake with infinite snow-covered hills, a wooden chalet is tucked away amid pine trees. Not a sound, no demands, no judgment. I pressed the book button. I had no idea what was in store for me in Wyoming at that time. However, I was certain that I was over being the one who was forgotten. Soft yellow light spilled onto the warm wooden floor as I sat by myself on the living room floor that evening. Beside me, my empty suitcase opened like a blank canvas, ready to be filled. The flat was so silent that I could hear the clock ticking away. I had recently scheduled a ski vacation to White Pine Lodge in Wyoming, a destination I had never visited and never thought would serve as the catalyst for my self-rescue. I didn't reserve a seat in economy. Not now. I pressed the payment button without hesitation after selecting first class. This time, I would choose myself every single moment, even if I had spent years worrying about every little detail for parties that weren't even mine and putting everyone else's feelings first. I chose a quiet cottage on the frozen lake with a true wood-burning stove and large windows overlooking snow-capped mountains. Lift tickets, a personalized ski lesson, and even a fine dining meal at the resort restaurant were all included in the package. Some people would cringe at the whole expense, but I didn't mind. Spending money on other people was nothing new to me. I was investing in myself this time. Wearing a heavy cream coat and the beige knit hat I purchased last year but never wore, I got to the airport early on Friday morning. I felt as though I had just broken the rope that had bound me to years of heavy expectation as I sat in the first-class lounge with my hands wrapped around a steaming cup of tea and watched jets float by the windows. It was a smooth flight to Wyoming. Perhaps for the first time in my life, I felt like I deserved to be treated like a true VIP by the flight attendants. I shivered in the freezing cold when the jet touched down at Jackson Hole. However, it was a pleasant cold. A cold that shocked me into clarity, like my body was removing every last remnant of thoughtless words, weighty silences and stares that no longer saw me. Hank, a middle-aged man with a friendly voice and a salt and pepper beard, was the driver who came to get me. "Visiting White Pine for the first time?" As he buckled his seatbelt, he inquired. "Yes, I've heard it's serene and lovely. Hopefully, it lives up to the hype." Better than anticipated. Squinting beneath his sunglasses, he grinned. "People come here to discover who they are. Perhaps you're doing it as well." After a little delay, I gave a gentle nod. "Perhaps I am." The drive from the airport descended through icy pine trees, with wooden homes strewn like postcards down the slope. I was out of breath for a moment when we arrived at White Pine Lodge's gate. It was beautiful. A main lodge made of stone and wood. The roof's shingles were coated with snow. Smoke curled in a gentle cloud from the chimney. Everything appeared to be straight out of a fairy tale. I was greeted with a warm smile by Tara, the receptionist, a woman about my age with a long braid and pink, cold cheeks. "I assume you're Victoria. Your cabin is prepared. Here's a glass of wine to welcome you. We wish you an amazing stay." My hand trembled a little from the cold as I took the glass of red wine, or perhaps out of passion. I wasn't certain. Nestled in the most tranquil area of the resort was the cabin. My cheeks flushed as soon as I entered because of the warmth from the fireplace. A bed with a comforter made of fluffy down. A chair by the fireplace. A little bookcase containing winter literature. And beyond the window, a frozen lake glinting in the sunset. After putting my bag down, I poured myself a glass of wine, sank into the plush wool rug, and simply sat quietly. No phone notifications. No messages that make you feel guilty. I'm not being asked to be the larger person by anyone. It's just me and the tranquility I've long desired. I took a picture of the cabin with a caption that wasn't on the list after opening my phone. After that, create your own list. To let them know I wasn't simply absent, I set it to go online 2 hours later, right before the celebration back home would begin. I made the decision to gracefully and purposefully vanish. I read the book that night while sitting by the fireside and periodically glanced up to see the snow falling outside the window. And I knew then and there that I had made the proper decision. My phone buzzed for the third time in less than 5 minutes as I was pouring myself another glass of red wine. The screen displayed Mom with the well-known 3 dots, as if she were typing something lengthy that required careful consideration. I chose not to open it. Rather, the first placed my feet on the armchair, covered my legs with the cozy fleece blanket, and raised the wine to my lips. There was a faint scent of wood and berries, cozy and sophisticated, a far cry from the mayhem that awaits me in my email. My family's emotions erupted like wildfire, exactly as I had anticipated when my cabin photo post went online on time. The list does not include the basic caption. After that, create your own list, accompanied with a picture of me sitting by the fireplace with a drink in my hand and snow shining through the window. Everyone understood, yet it didn't require a tag or an explanation. Suddenly, the message storm started. "Mom, what are you doing, Vic? Don't let your feelings to control your behavior. Everyone hoped you would be their father. Now is not the time for showmanship. This is Noah's celebration." "Are you serious, Noah? Posting a picture like that and allowing rumors to circulate?" "What are you looking for?" I chuckled quietly. "What am I looking for? All I want is recognition." However, it's obvious that my family still considers that a luxury. Mia, Noah's ideal fiancée, who had previously thanked me excessively for helping to organize their engagement party, and now sat motionless as a statue as I was left out of this welcoming celebration, sent me another message a few minutes later. "I don't want to see you suffer, Mia Victoria, but if you continue, things will only become worse. You're putting Noah in a bad place." After placing my wine on the wooden table, I reclined in my chair and gazed at the fireplace's dancing flames. Putting Noah in a tight place. How about me? Was I ever taken into account for any of this? However, it didn't end there. When I uploaded a picture of golden waffles dripping with syrup next to a hot cup of coffee the following morning, I wrote, "Cold air, hot coffee, and no one controls my mood anymore." The first call was received. It came from Aunt Lydia, my mom's sister, who was always helpfully neutral, not from Mom or Noah. I didn't respond, but right thereafter I got a voicemail. "I understand that you're upset, Victoria, but you don't need to make this public. People will believe that you are betraying your family. Sincerely, my love. Return, calmly explain, and let's all join in the celebration. Don't take things too far. Wetness is a sense of hurt. Nobody questioned why I wasn't on the guest list, though. Nobody asked how I was doing. They were too preoccupied with maintaining the family's reputation, too preoccupied with making things right, too busy maintaining the good order. And me, just a name struck out, then held accountable for my inappropriate behavior. I felt chilly the more I considered it. Because the truth is so blinding, not because of the snow. I wasn't going overboard. They just weren't used to my sticking up for myself. I laid my phone down, opened the camera, and shot a photo from the cottage window, the frozen lake reflecting the sunshine like crystal. I just uploaded it with a smile and thumbs up emoji without writing a message. A college acquaintance made a comment almost immediately. "I wish I had the courage to break up relationships with individuals who don't deserve to be in my life. But you're living your best life." A former coworker commented, "I was once the shadow in my own family. You are an inspiration." I felt an odd churn in my chest as I read every phrase and every emoji. I wasn't alone myself. Even though my own family attempted to make me feel like the issue, total strangers were able to recognize my value. As the hearth fire dwindled to ashes that evening, I checked my phone again and saw another message from Noah. "Noah, if you had just come, none of this would have happened. Why you felt the need to turn this into a major lesson is beyond me." I typed a few words in private and then erased them. At last, I answered, "You're not meant for this lesson, it's for me. I will also remember it. I sent it. I didn't feel conflicted this time. I have no regrets. I simply felt calm. And I was aware that I had broken free from the ancient cycle of enduring in order to get acceptance." I was sitting on the hardwood floor by the cabin window, covered in a blanket and sipping hot chocolate when the phone rang again. My mother's side cousin Carla was the one. She was the only member of our extended family with whom I remained in contact because she was wise enough to avoid getting involved in the drama and compassionate enough to never harm anyone for her personal benefit. Her voice exploded with a mixture of enthusiasm and incredulity as soon as I picked it up. "Vic, God, oh God, take a seat. You won't believe what occurred just now." I smirked as I took a drink of cocoa. Either Noah said something stupid in front of Grandma or someone spilled the cake, I suppose. No, this goes well beyond that. I arched an eyebrow, recognizing that anarchy was imminent. Like she was hiding in a corner to summon me, Carla's voice faded to a whisper. Mia threw a mocktail all over Noah and then left the party in the midst. I almost dropped my drink. What? Yes! As it happens, Noah was caught flirting with his high school ex, Rachel Myers. The one Mia vowed was never permitted in public areas. I rested my knee on it, heart pounding. Myers, Rachel. Even an innocent birthday message on Facebook used to get me angry merely because of that name. Furthermore, Noah was never really good at establishing limits. Nia truly laughed, not only chuckled. Vic informed everyone that I was foolish to believe that you were a real adult before she stormed away. Then, suddenly, his clean white shirt was covered with a mocktail. Everybody froze. I didn't sure whether to laugh or groan. Noah, too, he went crazy after Mia departed. The masonry wall near the entryway was punctured. You know what happened? Hand broken. Bingo. The right wrist. Like a grapefruit in size. The ambulance had to be called. When your mother was crying, she said that everything was coming apart. Half of the visitors had discreetly departed by the time your dad raced around seeking assistance. Leaning on the counter, I put down my cocoa and proceeded to the kitchen. Something almost pathetically humorous was emerging from the disorganized puzzle in my head. Carla had not finished. Oh, and Uncle Pete, you recall, the one who often boasted about seeing whales in Alaska? He became so inebriated that he fell and hit the punch bowl with his face. I started laughing. No, I promise. The finest part, though. Can you guess what she said, Grandma? I remained silent since I knew the punchline would be delivered with force. Carla inhaled deeply before lowering her voice, as if she were disclosing a precious secret. You're paying the price for cutting out the one person in this family who truly loved you unconditionally, she remarked, staring Noah in the face while wearing a shirt soaked with punch and a bandaged hand. You were born of your own blood, so don't demand divine pardon. I went cold. Grandma had always seemed to me to be on the side of my parents, favoring peace above justice. However, she said that directly to Noah's face today. Carla went on. She got to her feet, picked up her cane, and left like a queen. Nobody spoke. Even though you weren't present, you were the focal point of tonight, Vic. With the phone in both hands, I made my way back to the couch. I am at a loss for words, Carla laughed. It is not necessary for you to speak. They knew how significant you were without you being there. By themselves, they destroyed it. And you're not the one who has to pay for it this time. I peered out the window. The snow continued to fall gently. Outside my hut, the pine forest was still and peaceful. Everything was quiet and peaceful, both inside and out. And in the midst of a party that I wasn't invited to, somehow, I was liberated. I had just gotten out of the cabin's porch hot tub. The towel, still smelling of herbal oil, was draped over my shoulders. Another message, this time from Noah, was on my phone when it buzzed again. None of this would have occurred if you had been present. With my finger tethered between two impulses, I gazed at the words. I should either erase it right away or retain it as a reminder that certain things are unavoidable once they are uttered. I didn't respond. I chose to sit on the wooden chair next to the outside fireplace instead, observing the snow accumulation on the pine branches with a peculiar mixture of resentment and silent laughter. For years, they had used me as the family's bulwark, and when I stopped standing there to take the brunt of their criticism, they were alarmed. Once more, my phone buzzed. It was Mom this time. Are you able to quit being so immature? Your father and I are handling everything, and Noah is a complete mess. Why do you decide to vanish when your family needs you? I inhaled deeply while attempting to control my rage. All my life, I had heard those lyrics. You're not there for us when we need you. Why don't you simply back off and be more like your brother? Family requires sacrifice. However, I was different this time. I didn't want to bear the burden of the roles they had given me against my will any longer. Then, when I didn't answer, Dad left me a missed call. His voicemail was left. I don't know why you're so upset over not getting asked to a party, Victoria. Noah is experiencing both physical and emotional suffering, and your mother has been sobbing all night. You've grown up. You should be aware that you must return at this time. I pursed my lips and kept my gaze fixed on the computer as it displayed yet another fresh message, this one from Mia Thick. I'm genuinely freaking out, even though I know I have no right to ask for anything. I don't know what to say to Noah, to his parents, to our companions. I feel like I damaged everything, and everyone is staring at me. Perhaps Noah would settle down if you could only speak to him, even for a little while. I felt a chill go through me. I was being blamed. Nobody questioned me about my absence from the gathering. None of them took that into account. Perhaps my lack of interest was due to fatigue. I'm sick of fixing things that no one else has ever attempted to maintain intact. Without being present to tidy up the mess, I launched my notes app and penned a single line. I didn't cause it, though. Then I got up, went into the cabin, opened the window, and poured myself a cup of peppermint tea. The smell of pine and melting snow filled the cool air as it blew in. I was positive of this. If I went back, I'd wind up cleaning up the pieces again, the one they never saw as essential until everything went apart. The most absurd aspect was that I took no action. With his ex, Noah flirted. Mia left. I lost control, and my parents? In their views, I became the focal point of the fallout even though I wasn't there. I grabbed my phone and went through all the messages, stopping when I saw Mom's. Are you able to quit being so immature? I clutched and pressed. Choose to proceed. Titled, The Conversation, Why I'm Not Going Back? I sent it to myself. The family group chat was then silenced once I went into settings. Silence was what I needed. To remember precisely why I left, not to forget. The firelight flickered over the wooden walls once more as darkness fell. I took the book open. I brought a novel on recovery and read gently, page per page. No guilt-tripping voices, no messages. The hut roof was being brushed by the wind, and voices whispering of liberation. And despite their best efforts to drag me back, I knew I wasn't in that old spot anymore. I had left my previous position, the peacemaker, the quiet endurer, the person who was never let to express enough emotion, hurt, or anger. When I awoke, sunshine was shining through the wooden slats, illuminating the ash-gray blanket with a gentle golden glow. My heart felt at ease as the sound of snow falling on the roof blended with the whispering wind outside the window. My phone, a dead metal block, rested silently on the nightstand. The night before, I would go into airplane mode. Noah, Mom, Dad, and all the relatives who felt they had the right to pass judgment were discreetly blocked after reading Mia's last message. I felt no remorse. Instead, I felt at ease for the first time in years. I dressed for skiing and went outdoors after a straightforward breakfast of toast and strong coffee. The scene played out like a picture. A group of people smiling while strapping on skis can be seen in the background, along with towering pines covered in snow and sunshine slicing down the snowy slopes. That morning session was given by Sam, a blonde instructor with a bright grin and delicate blue eyes that carried something understanding. Every time I tripped or wobbled on the snow, he reassured me and gently changed my position. Victoria, don't resist the hill. Simply unwind. Have faith in your body. After my third fall, with snow sticking to the back of my jacket, I smiled and said, "It knows the way." It sounds like a lesson in life. Perhaps it is. Sam gave a wink. I've met many individuals who came here to get away from something, but when they took the risk of gliding down the first hill, they understood that freedom was what they truly wanted. I felt a knot in my chest as I gazed at him. He probably had no clue how near to home that landed. I went on a snowshoeing excursion around the ice lake in the afternoon. The guide, Linda, was a kind, humorous woman in her 50s. Two people from Seattle were walking beside me. White Pine Lodge is where Mark and Jamie, who are most likely in their 40s, spend their yearly winter vacation. Is this your first time traveling alone? We stopped by an old pine tree, and Jamie asked. I gave a nod, a little bashful. Yes. And for the first time, not living up to the expectations of others. Pointing to the circle of footprints in the snow, Mark laughed. Then you're on the correct track. Traveling in the direction of someone isn't always the goal. Their goal is to escape. I went over to the lodge's bar that night. An acoustic guitar beneath a wooden ceiling, soft amber lighting, with people cuddled by the fire, sharing tales and sipping beverages. When Sam noticed me, he gestured me toward a table where several of the visitors were seated. After ordering a glass of red wine and taking a seat, I was laughing out as a Canadian man related his incredible wipe out on the hill from the previous year. Nobody inquired about my origins. Nobody asked me why I was by myself. And I came to the realization that sometimes letting a stranger avoid trying to dig into your history is the greatest thing they can do for you. My heart was warm, but my cheeks were flushed from the wine and the cold when I got back to the cabin that evening. I sat by the fireplace after removing my coat and covering myself with a blanket. As the wood crackled and the flames danced, I took out the diary I had brought from home and turned to the first blank page. It had been months since I had written a sentence. Freedom does not mean fleeing. It's refusing to return to places that hurt you. After shutting the notebook and setting it on the table, I switched my phone back on for the first time this trip. I scrolled over all of the missed alerts that flooded the screen without viewing any of them. I chose to open my settings instead, leaving the block list in place. I thus wanted no more excuses. I didn't require a further justification for my exclusion. I had made my own decision, and it had never felt more obvious. I grabbed my phone, turned on the camera, and took a picture across the snow with tree shadows and the moonlight reflected on the frozen lake through the cabin window. The caption was written by myself. I didn't vanish. I've just recently begun to live where I belong. No expectations, no labeling, just me being myself at last. I sat on the balcony of the cottage. With my feet on a stool and a wool robe wrapped around me, I was gently covered in melting snow, a warm cup of coffee in curled hands. The sun was coming up, gold painting the far-off mountains. Like a silky blanket, it casts a delicate sheen across the pine branches. No more receiving notifications about messages. Don't miss any more calls. The only sound coming from the trees is the wind, as well as my heartbeat. Steady and calm in my chest, it was like a life rhythm I had forgotten I had that morning. Inquiring about the shuttle return to the airport, I made my way to the front desk. I stopped in my tracks. I gazed at the calendar hanging behind the bar, eyes resting on the red, circled. My scheduled departure date is Sunday. I smiled as I looked up and asked Tara, the receptionist. Hot chocolate is warm, if I desired to remain for an additional week. Is the cottage available right now? Tara seems unsurprised. She tapped a few of keys and cocked her head. You're in luck since it hasn't been reserved yet. Do you want me to hold it? Without hesitation, I nodded. I had no fear of returning. In a place where I at last felt like myself, I just couldn't think of a single reason to go. Carla, the one cousin I still talk to despite everything, left me a message that afternoon while I was enjoying a glass of wine at the resort bar. To reportedly clear the air, your mom is planning a family gathering for next week. Just letting you know, you're on the guest of honor list. I reclined in my chair and gazed through my wine glass at the golden light. I started to smile slowly, not out of rage, but more because I knew the game too well. The intervention was a show disguised as concern. I would be forced back into the position of the one who has to comprehend in a collective defense. I scribbled a brief response, emailed it to Carla, and went off having fun. I hope your mess goes well. Not even a phony warmth or an exclamation point, just a farewell I couldn't take back. I then put the phone face down on the table, shut off the screen, and avoided touching it for the remainder of the day. The days that followed were calm and revitalizing, like a frozen brook in the forest. Sam and I would go skiing in the mornings, spend the afternoons strolling along the lake paths with old friends, and spend the nights back at the bar's wooden table, listening to Mark's tales of getting lost when hiking Colorado's mountains. No one mentioned family. Nobody inquired as to what I was fleeing. We didn't need to explain the past. We were just humans living in the present. While reading in the cabin one weekend morning, I became aware that days had passed without me feeling the need to be somewhere. I stopped feeling bad about not making things right. No longer felt burdened for not being on someone's list. I had once attempted to play all the parts. The unselfish sister, the obedient daughter, the lady who never failed anyone. But I knew this. You will always be a hazy version of yourself if you live for what other people think of you. I was simply Victoria, the coffee-drinking woman on a mountain, now. Sensing the sunlight on a heart that had at last stopped shattering and the wind in her hair, I put down the book, grabbed my coffee, and went out onto the balcony. As though they had also experienced silent grief, the mountain remained still and unwavering. I inhaled deeply while paying attention to the sound coming from my own chest. Be calm, rooted. After this voyage, I had no idea what lay ahead, but I was certain of one thing. I had ended up where no one had anticipated me to be, and I refused to allow anyone to remove my name from my own narrative this time. That journey taught me one thing. Sometimes walking away and eventually releasing yourself is more courageous than staying and fighting. I used to believe that my presence was necessary to prevent my family from disintegrating. It turns out that they looked in the mirror in that quiet, chilly place because I had left. I discovered the voice that had been long suppressed. I no longer plead for recognition. My value is determined by the strength of my absence. What are your thoughts on Victoria's choice? Should she continue on her own or turn around? Leave a comment with your ideas. Remember to subscribe for more compelling family tales.